Last summer was tough for me. I had just gone through a breakup and decided to spend some time alone in my late grandmother's old Victorian house. I thought the quiet would help me focus on my work as a graphic designer. But I quickly realized that I had no idea what I was getting into. The house was old and creaky. Sometimes, I felt like it was alive. I set up my workspace and started tackling my chores. At first, it felt fine. Solitude was comforting. But then, things took a strange turn. On my second night there, I was lying in bed, trying to sleep. That's when I heard it. A soft tapping sound from the attic. It felt like something was calling me. I told myself it was just the house settling. But the tapping didn't stop. It was persistent. I finally decided to check it out. My heart raced, but I thought maybe it was something harmless. As I walked to the attic door, the sound changed to rhythmic thumping. I felt uneasy, but I opened the door and climbed the stairs. The air was thick, and I could see shadows moving near the window. I thought I was imagining it. That's when I spotted old photos scattered on the floor. They showed people I didn't recognize, yet they looked eerily familiar. I couldn't shake the feeling that I knew them. Days went by. The tapping continued. I started feeling like someone was watching me. I peeked into rooms that had heavy curtains. It was strange how I felt something was always behind me. My skin crawled whenever I thought about those photos. Maybe I was just tired. But still, the weight of history pressed down on me. One evening, while working late, I caught sight of a shadowy figure through the attic window. I froze. Chills ran down my spine. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me back to reality. But that sight stayed in my mind, like a memory I couldn't quite remember. Looking back now, I can't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I thought solitude would help clear my mind, but it only blurred the lines between reality and nightmares. I felt moments slipping away, like sand through my fingers. I often glanced over my shoulder, wondering if it was my imagination or something more sinister hiding in the attic. Then it happened again. Late one night, I heard the tapping. It was louder this time. I knew I had to face it. I walked toward the attic again. As I reached the top step, I saw it. The shadowy figure stood there, clearer this time. Staring at me. Is anyone there? I croaked, but the room felt empty. I felt sick to my stomach. I wanted to run but somehow couldn't move. The silence felt heavy as I stared at that figure, my heart pounding in my chest, and all I could think was that the summer I thought would help me heal had turned into something dark. I stood frozen at the top of the attic stairs, staring into the dim light that illuminated the shape of the figure. It felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. My breath quickened, and finally, instinct kicked in. I turned to run, but my foot caught the edge of a stair, and I stumbled. I barely caught myself before I hit the ground. My heart raced as I darted downstairs, slamming the attic door behind me. I leaned against it, trying to quiet my panicked breathing. Something wasn't right, and I needed to figure it out. In the days that followed, I tried to return to normal. I buried myself in work, but the shadows from the attic lingered in my mind. I avoided that part of the house, but the tapping returned, louder than ever. It was as if it was mocking me. I reached for my phone, thinking I might record the sounds, but I hesitated. I didn't want to invite whatever was in there back into my life. Distracted and uneasy, I decided to step outside for a walk. The sun was bright, but I felt heavy. My feet led me to the back of the house, where the garden lay overgrown. It had once been beautiful, filled with flowers and memories, but now it felt abandoned. As I knelt down to pull a few weeds, something caught my eye. A large, flat stone lay partially hidden by vines. I pushed the plants aside and gasped. There was an inscription carved into the stone. It read, "Here lies Eleanor, beloved daughter, lost yet never forgotten." My grandmother's name. A chill ran down my spine, and I suddenly felt the air around me shift. Questions raced through my mind. Who was Eleanor? What happened to her? I had to know more. I returned inside and went straight to the small bookshelf in the living room, filled with dusty old books. I scanned the titles, looking for anything that might help me uncover the story behind Eleanor. My heart raced as I pulled out a leather-bound journal. The cover was cracked, and it felt fragile in my hands. As I flipped through the pages, I found my grandmother's handwriting. She wrote about her childhood, her family, and her life in the house. The stories were rich with detail, but one entry stood out. It spoke of a tragic loss, a sister named Eleanor who had passed away in a mysterious accident years ago. I read on, my heart pounding, as I learned about the events that unfolded. But the last entry sent a wave of unease through me. It hinted at something darker. Eleanor must not be forgotten. I can hear her voice at night, calling me. This wasn't just a faded memory, it was alive. I felt the weight of those words settle over me, as if the house itself was listening, waiting. And then, just as I was processing this new information, I heard the tapping again. This time, it wasn't just a sound. It felt like a call, a demand. A part of me wanted to run, but another part, one much bolder, urged me to confront whatever energy lingered in the attic. What was I afraid of? I took a deep breath. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The truth was out there, waiting for me. I climbed the stairs once more, the fear coiling tightly in my stomach, this time determined to find out what it wanted. And that's when everything went dark. When the darkness swallowed me, my first instinct was to reach for the railing. I fumbled in the void, my heart pounding as silence enveloped me. It felt suffocating, an unsettling absence of light that was more a presence than I could manage. I waited, breathing in the stale air, listening for any sound. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the attic in stark relief. The figure I had seen earlier was gone, but an overwhelming unease pulsed through the room. I was not alone. The air felt thick, charged with a simmering energy, and before I could fully process it, I noticed something new, a small box sitting at the center of the attic floor. Instinctively, I approached it, my fingers trembling. The box was simple, made of wood, with intricate carvings that almost seemed to move in the low light. I knelt down beside it, my breath quickening again. Had it been here before? I couldn't remember seeing it. As I brushed my fingers over the surface, I felt a chill run through me. The moment my hand touched the latch, the room felt heavy, as though I was being watched. I hesitated, but curiosity won. I opened the box slowly. Inside, there were old photographs, all sepia-toned and fragile. The first picture was of a little girl with dark hair, smiling widely. I recognized her immediately, it was Eleanor. Another photograph showed her with a group of people, and among them was my grandmother, looking much younger. They seemed so happy, but there was something in Eleanor's eyes that sent shivers down my spine. I flipped through the images, each revealing the warmth of family moments until I reached the last photo. There, Eleanor stood beside a wooden cart, a scared expression on her face as she looked past the camera. My stomach twisted. I wanted to know what happened to her, but it felt like opening a wound that was best left sealed. I glanced around the attic again, the tapping growing more insistent in my ears. Suddenly, I heard a voice, faint but unmistakable, whispering my name. Help me. It felt like a plea, a despairing echo that pierced through the wooden beams. Panic surged through me. I squeezed the box shut, but the voice grew louder, now mingling with the tapping that resonated like a heartbeat in the stillness. I stumbled backward, bumping into the wall as dread clawed at my throat. I had to escape, had to get away from whatever was awakening in this house. Just as I turned to the stairs, a gust of wind slammed a window open, and it rattled as if it were a warning. Taking a deep breath, I steadied myself. I couldn't let fear control me. I needed answers to how Eleanor died, what happened that tragic day. But as I gripped the handrail, I realized I couldn't leave. The connection had been made, and it wouldn't let me go. The house was alive with whispers of the past, and I was drawn deeper into its grip. Then, just as I was about to step back down, I felt a cold hand grasp my shoulder. I froze, my heart racing. That was the moment I understood I wasn't just in the house. I was trapped in a story that wasn't mine, one that was far from over. I stood there, paralyzed, the grip on my shoulder sending chills through my spine. My mind raced, searching for logic in the madness. What was this? A trick of the light? My imagination? But when I turned slowly, my breath caught in my throat. The figure was back, not just a blur or shadow. It stood before me, cloaked in a tattered dress that seemed to swirl with the air around it. I couldn't make out a face, just a sense of despair radiating from it. My heart hammered in my chest, and I fought the urge to bolt for the stairs. "Eleanor," I whispered, my voice barely breaking the air. The figure tilted its head, the pressure on my shoulder tightening just a bit, as if urging me to understand. "Help me," it repeated, but there was weight in the words, a pull that made me want to step closer. I was terrified, yet I felt a strange connection to this lost soul. I couldn't ignore it any longer. Squaring my shoulders, I cautiously reached out, my fingers brushing against the cool air where I imagined her hand would be. That touch sent a jolt through me, and the attic flickered, the lights dimming and brightening like a faulty bulb. In that moment, the room shifted. I could feel memories of the attic pressing in, filled with laughter and sorrow. The walls seemed to buzz with energy as old as the house itself. I saw flashes: Eleanor playing, a shot of my grandmother with a warmth in her eyes, the cart from the photograph. It rolled past me as though I was swept into a time long gone. Then the vision stopped, and I was back in the present, breathless. Eleanor's figure wavered, and I gasped as I realized a new detail: a small silver locket resting against her chest, glinting in the flickering light. I had seen that locket before, on my grandmother. "Where are you?" I asked desperately. "What happened to you?" The spirit's head dropped slightly, and just like that, the connection broke. The figures faded back into darkness, and I was left standing alone, the weight of the box heavy in my hands. Panic surged back. I couldn't let it slip away. I needed to know what happened to Eleanor. I wanted to chase after the apparition, but I couldn't take a step forward. It was too risky, too unknown. Instead, I looked back at the box on the floor, my heart pounding in time with the tapping that persisted somewhere in the distance. As I knelt down to examine the photographs again, my fingers grazed over one of them, the last one of Eleanor by the cart. Despite the fear wrapping around me, I flipped it over. In smudged ink, a date was scrawled: September 14, 1942. But then, a loud crash from the window jolted me into action. I dropped the picture, and the photos scattered across the floor. The house felt alive. Something was very wrong. Someone's in the house, I thought, panic igniting again. The tapping transformed into heavy footsteps, echoing closer. They were not echoes of the past, they were sounds from the present. With a swift glance back at the door, I knew it was time. I had to uncover the truth, even if it meant facing whatever was lurking in the shadows of this haunted home. I took a deep breath, gathering my courage. I had a decision to make. If I stayed here, I was trapped with the lingering presence of the attic and the sounds of a stranger prowling through my grandmother's old house. But if I went downstairs, I risked confronting whatever was making those footsteps. I slid my hand over the scattered photographs, biting my lip as I imagined what Eleanor had gone through. With a quick glance toward the dark staircase, I finally decided. I would not let fear dictate my actions. Gritting my teeth, I stood up and made my way to the door. The steps were creaky beneath my feet, but I was too focused to care. As I reached the top, I strained to hear, hoping to catch a glimpse of the intruder. I took a tentative step down the first few steps, listening intently. A sudden thud echoed from downstairs, followed by more shuffling. My heart raced. I clenched the box tightly, and in that moment, I felt a new level of urgency. Whoever was in the house could uncover everything: the box, the photographs, and Eleanor's story. I couldn't let that happen. Just as I reached the second step, the noises stopped. An uneasy silence fell, hanging heavy in the air. I hesitated, debating whether to back away or continue. I glanced behind me, half expecting to see Eleanor again, but the attic was still and empty. Then, I heard a whisper, a faint, chilling sound that sent shivers down my spine. It floated up from the hallway below. "Help me." Eleanor's voice, or was it something else? The fear wrapped around me tightly, but I couldn't let that stop me. I needed to know the truth. I crept down, careful to avoid the worst creaks in the floorboards. The hallway was dim, illuminated only by the sliver of moonlight spilling in through a cracked window. I snuck forward, my heart pounding loud enough that I was sure whoever lurked below could hear it. I reached the living room door and peered around the corner. The room was empty, save for the dust motes dancing in the air. The old clock ticked ominously, its rhythm matching my heartbeat. I stepped inside, holding my breath as I scanned for movement. Then, a glimmer caught my eye near the corner of the room. Fearful but driven by curiosity, I edged closer. There, half hidden beneath the couch, was a small object. I dropped to my knees, heart racing in anticipation. That's when I saw it: a silver locket, identical to the one Eleanor had worn. My stomach knotted with dread. How did it get here? I grasped it, relief washing over me. This had to mean something. Then, as if the house were answering my question, the tap of footsteps resumed, louder this time, right outside the door. I froze, sheer panic paralyzing me. Someone was definitely in the living room with me. As I turned quickly to slip away, I bumped into something cold and hard. My breath hitched as I looked up, realizing I wasn't alone anymore. The figure loomed above me, shrouded in shadow. My heart threatened to jump out of my chest. I squinted, trying to make out the features of the intruder. Was it a man? A woman? My mind raced. The locket slipped from my fingers and clattered to the floor, breaking the tense silence. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, my voice cracking. The figure didn't answer. Instead, they stepped closer, and I could finally see a glint of light reflecting off something in their hand. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I was glued to the floor, and fear held me captive. "Just looking for something," the figure said, their voice low and gravelly. It felt oddly familiar, but I couldn't place it. A chill ran down my spine. "Like what?" I asked, forcing myself to sound braver than I felt. "Your grandmother's secrets." The figure took another step, and something inside me snapped. I finally willed my legs into action and darted toward the nearest exit, the kitchen. I burst through the door and skidded across the floor, nearly losing my footing. Glancing back, I saw the shadow moving closer, but I didn't stop. I needed to get to the back door. As I reached for the handle, I felt dread creep over me when I realized it was locked. I hadn't locked it when I came down. "Help me." The whisper resounded through the room again, but this time it was louder. The chilling echo sent a tremor through me. I dashed into the living room, hoping to find another way out. My mind raced through potential hiding spots as I glanced around. Then, I caught sight of the old cabinet in the corner. Without thinking, I opened it and squatted inside, pulling the door slightly ajar. Holding my breath, I waited, praying the intruder wouldn't find me. I could hear footsteps getting closer, each one striking the floor like an ominous drum. They paused just outside the kitchen, and my heartbeat mixed with the tick of the old clock. I risked a glance through a crack in the wood. The figure shuffled into view again, scanning the room. I couldn't see their face, but the silhouette radiated an unsettling intensity. They moved slowly, almost like they were searching for something precious. I held back a shiver that threatened to escape. Then, the soft glimmer of something silver caught my eye. It was the locket, now between the intruder's fingers. Suddenly, they stopped and tilted their head, as if sensing my presence. My breath hitched in my throat, and I pressed myself against the back of the cabinet, heart racing. What did they want with Eleanor's secrets? Did they know about the locket? Was that why they were here? Before I could contemplate further, the figure turned sharply and headed toward the hallway. I waited, barely breathing, listening as their footsteps faded away into another room. Finally, I pushed the cabinet door open and stepped into the living room again. I couldn't stay here. I needed to get out, confront the figure, or at least find a way to warn someone. But just as I reached the entrance, the lights flickered, plunging the room into darkness. In the pitch black, all I could hear was my own breath and the faint sounds of an approaching presence. As the light returned, I grasped the locket tightly in my hand. I wouldn't let go of my grandmother's secrets. Not now, not ever. But as I turned around, I realized I was no longer alone. Someone or something stood directly behind me. My pulse accelerated, thundering in my ears as I slowly turned around. The figure stood just a few feet from me, their features still cloaked in darkness. A gut feeling told me fleeing was useless. I was cornered, I could see no way out. "Who are you?" I repeated, though my voice trembled. The figure merely stared, their face obscured by a hood. The only thing I could catch was the light glinting off the silver object in their hand, the locket. "Your grandmother's secrets," they said again, this time softer, almost pitying. "You're holding on too tightly." There was something unsettling about their tone. It felt like they cared, yet it sent a chill down my spine. "What do you want with it?" "Knowledge," they replied cryptically, taking a step closer. I stepped back, trying to keep the distance. It felt wrong to be this close to a stranger who knew about my family, my past. "Knowledge?" I echoed, hoping to buy time. "About what? Who are you?" But the figure didn't answer. Instead, they raised the locket, allowing the light to catch its true form. It shimmered with an intensity that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "Your grandmother wanted you to find it, to understand." They paused, their piercing gaze locked onto mine. "But you're not ready." "Ready for what?" Panic laced my voice, and I felt the urge to run wash over me once more. It was like being caught in quicksand. The more I struggled, the deeper I sank. "That's for you to figure out," they replied mysteriously. And with that, the air grew still, an eerie silence filled the space. I glanced around for options, desperate for any distraction. "Where's your evidence?" I blurted. "Prove you know anything about my grandmother." The figure flinched but held their ground. I felt a surge of sudden courage. "At least show me your face." "I can't talk to a shadow." They hesitated, tension straining the thin air between us. "You really want to see who I am?" Their voice lost some of its gravel, revealing a hint of a familiar tone. "Why not? Show me." I shouted, suddenly feeling emboldened. To my shock, the figure pulled back their hood, revealing a face I would have never expected. It was a mix of recognition and disbelief. My heart dropped. I stumbled backward, bumping into something solid. "That's when I saw it," I whispered, even aware of the absurdity of the moment. It was someone I had known long ago, lost in time and memory. But before I could form any questions, the lights flickered again, and the room was plunged into blackness. A rush of urgency overtook me as I realized this wasn't just a conversation anymore. Something more sinister was at play. Just then, I heard a faint whisper, much like the one I had heard before. "Help me." It seemed to echo from the depths of the house, echoing around corners I hadn't even thought to check. With a jolt, I turned back to the figure, but they were gone. The only thing left was the lingering echo of their voice and the trembling fear of what was lurking in the shadows. I steeled myself, whatever was happening was far from over. The silence in the room felt suffocating. I strained to hear any sign of movement, but the only sound was the whisper of my own breath. Each second stretched painfully long, and I could almost feel the weight of the darkness pressing in on me. I took a cautious step forward, my heart racing. An urge to escape clawed at me, but the thought of what lay beyond the door sent another shiver down my spine. I had to know more. I had to understand why my grandmother's secrets were so important. Before my mind could spiral into panic, I focused on the whisper. "Help me," the voice seemed to call me, urging me to follow. It was faint but filled with desperation. I hesitated, torn between fear and curiosity. "Hello." I called out, my voice trembling in the still air. "Is anyone there?" There was no answer. Just the oppressive quiet. I couldn't shake the feeling that the figure's words still hung in the air like a warning. Gritting my teeth, I took another step, moving toward the main hallway. The moment I crossed the threshold, a sudden chill wrapped around me, and I felt a draft. It was odd, like someone had just passed by in a hurry. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but I couldn't let fear control me anymore. "Where are you?" I whispered, squinting into the dark. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a flicker of light reflecting off the wooden floor. I moved toward it, confusion mixing with a flicker of hope. The light pulsed, drawing me in, and I felt an inexplicable pull toward it. As I reached the doorway to the living room, I noticed my grandmother's old rocking chair move ever so slightly, as if someone had just gotten up. My breath hitched. I stepped closer, peering into the dimly lit room. There was no one there. The chair gently creaked, but it suddenly stopped when I glanced at it. I felt a strange sensation, like eyes were observing me with intent. My heart pounded as I scanned the room. I sensed movement behind me, and I whipped around, barely catching a shadow darting past the kitchen doorway. It was quick, almost too quick. "What are you?" I called out, my voice steadier than I felt. There was no reply, just the echo of my own fear. Deciding I had to investigate further, I moved cautiously toward the kitchen. My hand brushed against the cool countertop as I passed, glancing over my shoulder. I felt exposed, as if someone or something was waiting for me to make a mistake. A sudden crash from the back hall made me jump. I rushed toward the sound, my instincts pushing me forward against my better judgment. As I rounded the corner, I saw it. The door to the attic stood ajar, a faint light seeping through the crack. "Who's up there?" I shouted, the tension coiling tightly in my chest. I took a step toward the stairs, the wooden steps creaking underfoot. "Help me," the voice returned, clearer now, blending with the sound from above. The very air seemed charged with anticipation. I couldn't shake the eerie sensation that whatever I'd find up there would change everything. I hesitated for a moment, should I turn back? But I could feel a compulsion to find out what was hidden in the shadows. Taking a deep breath, I ascended the stairs, the weight of each step echoing my rising dread. Just as I reached the threshold, the whisper picked up, swirling through the air with urgency. "Help me, before it's too late." My heart raced as I stepped over the threshold, ready to confront whatever awaited me, truth and terror mingling as one. The attic was dimly lit, the only source of light spilling in from a small window on the far side. Dust motes danced in the yellow glow, creating an eerie atmosphere. I cautiously stepped inside, my senses heightened. The air felt heavy, laden with memories I couldn't grasp. "Help me," it was louder now, almost pleading. The voice echoed off the walls, sending chills down my spine. I scanned the room, searching for the source. Boxes were piled haphazardly, remnants of a life I barely knew. I could feel my heart thudding in my chest, each beat thumping louder than the last. I noticed a small trunk in the corner, partially hidden behind a stack of old books. The whisper seemed to come from that direction. Taking a deep breath, I walked over, my hands trembling. What could it be? I pushed aside a few books and hesitated, staring at the trunk's worn surface. With a shaky hand, I lifted the lid. It groaned in protest, revealing contents covered in dust. Inside were faded photographs, a delicate locket, and what looked like a journal. I pulled it out, feeling an odd connection to it. The moment I touched the journal, a gust of wind swept through the attic, slamming the door shut behind me. I jumped, my instincts kicking into high gear. Panic surged through me as I turned to the door, pulling at the handle. It wouldn't budge. I was trapped. Help me. The voice was frantic now, resonating through the attic like a haunting melody. My skin prickled with fear. I couldn't just sit there. I had to find out who or what was trying to reach me. Fighting against the rising tide of terror, I opened the journal. The pages were yellowed and fragile. I skimmed through the entries, my eyes widening as I read snippets of my grandmother's life. She spoke of hidden treasures and dark family secrets, of a time when forces beyond her control took everything from her. Then I saw it. A scribbled note in the margin caught my attention. Beware the shadow in the attic. It waits for the unwary. My breath caught in my throat. What had my grandmother faced? Who was the shadow? It felt like a warning meant for me. A sound behind me made me whip around. The rocking chair was suddenly back, moving slowly as if someone was sitting in it. I blinked, and it stopped, leaving only the faint creaking echoing in the silence. My heart raced again, an urgency pulling me toward the door. I wasn't alone. Then, out of nowhere, the shadows shifted. A figure emerged, dark and indistinct. I could barely make out its face, but I felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me. Help me, it whispered, the words now coming from the apparition itself. The room spun, my instincts screaming to run. Just as I turned back to the trunk, the voice intensified, blending with the shadows around me. Help me before it's too late. That's when I saw it. The journal slipped from my hands, falling open to a page I hadn't noticed before, revealing an ominous sketch. It was a drawing of the attic, and something dark lurking in the corner, where I had just been standing. The air grew heavy, and the figure moved closer. I had to make a choice. Face the darkness or uncover the truth about my grandmother's legacy. The intensity of the moment pressed against me, leaving only one clear thought: I needed to escape, or risk becoming part of the shadows myself. I could feel the oppressive weight of the attic's darkness pressing against me, each whisper and creak echoing my thoughts. The figure, a mere outline now, loomed closer, its edges blurring and pulsing with an ominous energy. Help me before it's too late. Echoed in my ears as the shadows twisted around it, drawing more memories from the house itself. Every fiber of my instinct told me to flee, but I was rooted in place, caught between the stories I longed to uncover and the terror that gripped my heart. I didn't know why, but something deeper within urged me to confront whatever was haunting this attic and my family's legacy. Who are you? I managed to say, my voice wavering in the eerie silence. Eleanor. The name escaped its lips, coated in anguish. The realization hit me like a cold wave. This was Eleanor, my grandmother's sister, the one I had read about, the one whose secrets were buried beneath years of silence and dust. The voice surrounded me, enveloping me in that sense of desperation. With a surge of resolve, I exclaimed, "What happened to you?" I could only hope that the question might reveal the truth hidden in this suffocating haze. The figure wavered, almost as if forming an answer, but just then, the attic lights blinked and then flickered out again, casting everything into pitch-black darkness. My heart raced as panic washed over me. I could hear the whispers climbing in intensity, rising like a tide, but I couldn't let fear ensnare me. In a surge of reckless courage, I reached for the trunk. My hands grasped the journal, absorbing its weight and the lives it contained. Words, even the ones scribbled in haste, held power. I flipped back to the last page I had seen, feverishly searching for guidance. Beware the shadow in the attic, it waits for the unwary. The words echoed in my mind, yet I couldn't do nothing. I could not let Eleanor remain trapped. Eleanor. I called into the thick blackness, my voice breaking through the chaos. Tell me what I can do. I want to help. For a moment, silence enveloped me again. I could feel the breath of the house, the ancient wood creaking in contemplation. Then, as if in response, a flicker of light returned, illuminating the attic just enough to reveal the delicate outlines of Eleanor's form. She seemed drawn to something in the trunk. "Set me free," she breathed, her voice now an ethereal echo. My pulse quickened, it was a plea as much as a command. "What do I have to do?" I asked, the urgency in her voice igniting something inside me. "Release the truth," she whispered, her form flickering like a candle's flame. "Promise not to forget." My fingers trembled as I opened the trunk wide, spilling the faded photographs onto the floor. "I'll remember you, Eleanor. I promise." All at once, the air became electric. The photographs swirled in a sudden gust, whipping around the room like a tempest. Images of Eleanor's life, the joy, the sorrow flickered around me, encasing the attic in haunting beauty. Time seemed to fade as flashes of Eleanor's past washed over me, revealing her bright laughter and dark grief. An accident. A hidden loss which trailed into obscurity when my grandmother chose to bury the family's darkest hours. A shadow that never fully left. I could feel her presence beginning to drift, the weight of her pain lifting as if a fog were parting. "Thank you," her voice faded, becoming softer. I spread my arms wide, wanting to embrace the lightness I felt blooming in the space around me, a connection forged from sorrow and understanding. For a fleeting moment, it was peaceful. But then, the shadows surged violently, climbing the walls, and I felt the temperature drop. They were agitated, fighting against her release. A shudder ran through the floor, and the attic door rattled against its frame. "You can't let her go." A voice hissed from the darkness. It was the intruder. The tension of the house twisted ominously. "Stay back!" I yelled, panicking, scrambling to my feet. I snatched the locket off the floor, clutching it like a talisman of my grandmother's love. "I will remember." The shadows seemed to rise to my defense as Eleanor's calm faded into an urgent warning. "You must leave. It's not just the past, it's the present that binds me here." I took a step backward, instinct screaming for survival. How? Unravel the truth. A surge of loyalty raced through me, bizarre, loyal to a woman I had never known. The lighter energy intensified, swirling together in a brilliant cascade until the figure began to dissolve, her essence freed but dense with finality. With one last glance at the trunk, now a shadow of its former self, pulsing with energy, I turned and bolted toward the stairs. I could hear the instability of darkness pursuing me, reaching out for whatever remnants of Eleanor's memories still lingered in the attic. I flew down the stairs, the echoes of "help me," now muted, receding behind me. All I could taste was the desperate need to escape and the lingering call of a story begging to be told, a story nearly lost but not forgotten. As I burst through the kitchen door, I stumbled outside into the night air, the cool breeze welcoming me back. I turned, peering back at the house. It stood tall against the moonlit sky, a figure, a guardian of memories, a reminder. But did I truly learn the whole truth? Did I set Eleanor free? Someday, someone might unlock those answers, just as Eleanor would remain wrapped in the fabric of her family's history. I moved away from that house, but I could feel her presence lingering at the edge of my thoughts. It changed my understanding of family and connection, a mix of darkness bearing light. Even though I left, sometimes I wonder, did the house still whisper its stories to the shadows? And did I really escape? As I drove away, I tucked the locket carefully into my pocket, promising myself that I would seek out the threads of her story, no matter how tangled. The night held questions I couldn't quite grasp, the answers clinging just out of reach as I left a world straddling the edge of reality and memory behind.